Welcome again, everyone. I hope you're staying warm. I am here in sunny Chicago, where we just survived a couple of below zero days, which I have learned as a parent, it's not the weather that gets you, it's the canceled daycare that gets you. So I'm glad we survived those 2 days. But the reason we're all here today is to talk about the National Retail Federation Big Show. Michelle and I have put together a summary of some of our key takeaways from that show. For those who I haven't met yet, I'm Jason Retail Geek Goldberg. I'm the Chief Commerce Strategy Officer for the group. To make the webinar more interesting and insightful, I have invited one of my much smarter co-workers with me, Michele Roney, who leads commerce at our Mars United commerce team on the retail and CX side. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We are grateful to have you. So as a reminder, Publicis Commerce is the commerce division of Publicis Group. We're a collection of subject matter experts from across the various agencies. Super excited to welcome all our new Martians to that group, and added a lot of great expertise and insight from the Mars team, such as Michele. We help create comprehensive in-commerce experiences for many clients across the group. But that's probably enough about Publicis for now. The main thing you should take away from NRF, if you take nothing else away, is that I was dramatically overexposed. Apparently they had more trouble than usual getting good speakers on stage, so I ended up on stage 4 times at this year's show. So good news, I got to see a lot of the content from the stages. Bad news, it's a super busy show every year. I always have a FOMO of the things I'm missing while I'm doing something else, and all of these presentations on the stage meant that I didn't get to see as much of the show myself as I'd wanted to, but fortunately for us, I have aggregated the insight of many of the other practitioners at Publicis Commerce. So I think we have a good recap of the whole show. So background for those of you that might have never attended or aren't super familiar, the National Retail Federation is a trade organization dedicated to advocating the roles and importance of retail in the U.S. economy. And the Big Show is an annual show in early January in New York that was founded in 1911, if you can believe it. This is the 114th year of the Big Show. 114 years ago, a number of the New York apparel brands kind of got together to share thoughts and best practices about the young industry, and it's continued for 114 years. This year we had over 40,000 people attending the show. They come from over 100 different countries, but the country you'll most notice outside of the US are our friends from Brazil. There's a lot of Portuguese spoken and a lot of great Portuguese or Brazilian retailers that attend the show every year. There's over 6,200 brands represented at the show. There were 175 content sessions, 450 speakers, and most importantly and impressively, there were over 7,000 Krispy Kreme donuts that were consumed at the show. So I don't know exactly what year this tradition started, but I've been going to the Big Show for 30 years, and they always serve donuts before the morning keynotes. And so they always start earlier in the morning than I would like, but they always start with a delicious donut. And for the last about 12 years, it's been sponsored by Krispy Kreme. So we got to eat a lot of delicious donuts at the show. But beyond the culinary experience at NRF Big Show, Michele and I have kind of identified 3 main themes for this year's show. So that's what we're really going to dive into today to kind of prepare you for what you're going to hear about. Those 3 themes are the evolution of retail media networks, kind of moving from 1.0 to 2.0. Of course, there's a lot of talk about AI, and in particular, this new genre of AI called agentic AI or agent-based AI. And then there was a lot of uncertainty, and discussion about the state of the industry. So those will be our three topics. Michele, you are my go-to expert on that first topic of retail media networks. So what was happening at NRF with regards to retail media networks?
Well, this year was the second annual Retail Media Day at 100 out of 114 years at NRF. And it shows obviously the importance of retail medias across retail. Andy Murray from Saatchi X kicked off the day. He delivered a keynote to a sold out crowd of over 500. The theme was reconciling the driving forces of retail media and the future. And his point was that it's very clear that retail media networks are unstoppable force in the retail industry. And so that's why NRF has to dedicate a day to it. His message was really to CMOs in the audience, and I think it's really important to see what's happening in retail media and why CMOs should be thinking about or wanting to invest in retail media versus having to, and what a more integrated approach could really do for their business overall. A lot of the notion of influencing leadership to embrace corporate media and marketing and RMNs, and that needs to start from the top. And that ensures both organizations are collaborating and innovating together. Separately, they do an amazing job, but they're not really innovating together and learning together. So whatever collaboration can happen within those two organizations, who are both under a CMO usually, is the best way to get an integrated customer experience that's going to drive sales and traffic for everyone. And obviously, the best way to move faster is to start with change management. So the four main themes that we distilled this down to, and I'm not going to start in order, but I'm going to start in my own order. And that's because I think the biggest topic that everyone is talking about today is in-store retail media. How do we get to in-store? How do we get closer to where conversion happens? And, Jason talked about how many Brazilians there were there, but there were also a couple of really advanced retailers. Walmart Mexico was there. Reve, I think I said that correctly. And the message that we're seeing from them is they're much farther along when it comes to in-store connectivity. They're leveraging customer identity graphs. They're delivering iROAS models for in-store that are extremely advanced. And it's where we want to be. So we need to continue to look to the rest of the world. And although it may be different here in the US, there's definitely a lot of key learnings we can get from our global partners in retail. So that was the first one I wanted to bring up. The second one is really, and I'm going to say this is what we say every day, customer-centric mindset. I don't care whether you're in retail media or retail or anywhere, but what you need to focus on is that customer-centric mindset. And in retail media, a lot of retailers have been focusing on just getting their network stood up and, using the same products that they're seeing in other retailers. And I think it's becoming, you've got to be curious and you've got to keep thinking about what makes you different. And we'll talk about that more in a second. And what's the right experience for your customers. And again, just getting closer to that desired action of conversion as close as you can get to the conversion point. And the next I'm going to talk about a little bit is unlocking the value of retail media measurement. The call is to continue to up level. And, we hear this every day more and more that we not only need to understand how RMN measurement is working, but also how it fits into MMM and MTA models. Should it stand alone? Should it be integrated? And the answer, we're seeing is yes to all. But regardless, you've got to keep evolving your measurement. And then the last one I'm going to come to is differentiating to win. And that is, when you look at the industry today, more and more retail media networks constantly starting. It's getting more and more difficult for CPGs to determine where to spend their investments. It's getting spread thin. But more importantly, what we're hearing and what we're seeing is that RMNs have huge growth targets that are being set by their leadership. So how do you compete? So, in this 2.0 model, I think the thing that you really need to think about is how should you or how would you market your network? Everyone that is in retail media are good marketers, but they haven't marketed their own network. If you build it, they will come, is the thinking. So, start to think about what makes your network unique. Is there something you can deliver that an advertiser can't get anywhere else? An audience that's rare and hard to find in the open market, an in-store experience that's second to none. So if you take some time to focus on your selling story and identify how you can stand out, you definitely stand a chance. So next slide. Y'all get a retail media network. You get a retail media network, and you get a retail media network. We all get one. We're going to talk a little bit more about how we can look at and help you not only build, but also optimize and accelerate your media network with an audit that we deliver. So I'm going to hand it back to Jason for the rest of the show.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I'm super excited to get my very own retail media network. The in-store stuff in particular, I echo. I heard a lot of conversation about that in the hallways as well. And one of the ways I always like to think about it is, Walmart is a very large site. They get half as much traffic as Amazon, and Target gets half as much traffic as Walmart, and Kroger gets half as much traffic as Target. You very quickly in the retail e-commerce space start getting diminished traffic on these individual sites. But Walmart gets 4 times as much traffic in their stores as they do on their website. So the in-store traffic at Walmart is actually much bigger than the total traffic to Amazon. And so, if you're a retailer and you really want to unlock the maximum potential of these kind of networks, it seems like you ultimately have to figure out how to do it in store. So that makes total sense. And you reminded me in my upfront, I was sort of remiss in one thing. It's a 114-year-old show, but it's always evolving. And so, you mentioned last year was the first year they had a dedicated day to retail media networks. It was also last year was the first year they had a dedicated pavilion to food service, and so the food service pavilion came back bigger and stronger this year. That's an area of interest as restaurants and food service have kind of collided with retail. About 3 years ago, there was big news because Walmart rejoined the National Retail Federation, and John Furner, the CEO of Walmart US, became the chairman of the National Retail Federation. 60 years ago, when Mr. Sam started Walmart, the National Retail Federation wasn't sure they were in love with this crazy new idea of discount retail, and they weren't very welcoming to Sam Walton. And so that kind of represented a reconciliation of Walmart and the NRF. And the reason I point that out is because this year, NRF welcomed a new member that you may be familiar with, Amazon, right? And much like discount retail, the National Retail Federation wasn't so sure they loved these pure play online retailers at first, who at the time weren't paying sales taxes and things like that. And so now they've fully welcomed Amazon into the fold, and Doug Harrington, who runs retail for Amazon, was voted to the National Retail Federation board this year. So things continue to evolve, and 2 big announcements of the evolution. Last year, the NRF went global for the first time, and they held an NRF Asia show in Singapore. So they announced that was a big success, and they're going to go back to Singapore this year. So obviously, I assume Michelle and I will both be invited to be keynote speakers in Singapore, which I understand has delicious food. I haven't been yet, so I'll look forward to that. And then mostly as a nod to Publicis, the NRF has decided to expand the big show to Europe. And so, of course, they chose Paris as the first destination for the NRF Big Show Europe. So this September, the NRF will be hosting a new event in Paris, and we'll be excited to participate in that as well. So that catches us all up. We've talked about retail media networks. It probably won't be a surprise to anyone on this webinar, but you can't have a commerce event today and not talk about artificial intelligence. And so certainly that was a big presence, front of mind for a lot of attendees and exhibitors at this year's show. One of the funny quotes I heard that really sort of resonated with me is Pano Anthos, who's the founder of a VC called XRC Venture. He said something to the effect of, hey, the pace of innovation is outpacing the pace of adoption. And by that, what he meant is you walk around the trade show floor, you see 4,500 or 450 exhibitors showing various AI technologies, and you might think that all of retail is 100% AI and the robots have taken over everything. There's a lot of interesting ideas. Most of which have not been deployed at scale at retail yet. So we're still very early days. There absolutely are some early successes, but we do have to differentiate between the interesting, quirky ideas that all the innovative new startups at NRF are bringing to retailers versus what retailers are really deploying and getting value from. But AI absolutely made it onto the keynote big stage. So John Furner, the CEO of Walmart US, facilitated an interview with Azita Martin, who's the general manager of the retail division of NVIDIA. And you'll know NVIDIA as the richest, most successful public company of all times that built the world's greatest chips for video gaming. And they accidentally became the mission critical ingredient in AI. So the company totally exploded and is now one of the leaders in AI space. So they had a good conversation about AI in the future of retail. And we they kind of talked about there being two big categories of AI. That in the short run, there are a lot of retailers that are benefiting from using AI to be more efficient, to do something they were already doing, but to do it better, cheaper, more successfully. And that lots of retailers have already had early successes with these efficiencies, and that the coming disruption of AI is moving beyond doing the same things we've always done, just better with AI, but doing new things that weren't possible before AI. And that's where this agentic AI comes in. So we started out talking about the efficiencies. One of the cases that NVIDIA brought on stage was Lowe's. And interestingly, Lowe's has created a digital twin of their 1,700 stores. So in the old days, when you wanted to invent a new store, you built a dark store. You got a huge 100,000 square foot lot, and you built a store, and you paid test subjects to go shop in that store, and you figured out new things you wanted to do, and then you sent it to your 1,700 stores only to discover that it didn't fit because every one of those stores had a different floor plan and unique idiosyncrasies, and so you had a lot of inefficiencies there. But today, they don't build a dark store. They build a virtual reality dark store and they put it in all 1,700 existing stores via this sort of digital twin technology. And so that was really interesting. They had cases from Target and Walmart where they said, one of the earliest wins in AI has been using AI to make employees better. And so Target talked about, they rolled out a tool to all Walmart associates that's called the Walmart Store Companion, which is essentially a generative AI engine that could answer Target associate questions on behalf of Target guests. And very similarly, Walmart has an app for all of the Walmart associates, the 1.4 million Walmart associates, called Me at Walmart. And they added an Ask Sam feature to that, which is sort of a virtual Sam Walton that can answer any question. Chris Nichols, the CEO of Sam's Club, mentioned that Ask Sam feature had enabled them to take 100 million tasks that associates used to have to do in the club and bypass them by being more efficient. So they're already getting real efficiencies from using all of this AI technology. And then of course, the coming experiences that we'll talk about in just a minute are the agentic experiences. I did want to just highlight a couple of vendors I saw at the show that were pretty interesting in terms of the efficiencies. So Tolstoy, which is the vendor on the right here, they have built a tool that imports organic social videos and turns them into shoppable product videos that can be used as ads on social media, that can be used as video on product detail pages. But essentially, this was a great example of what I call turning unstructured data into structured data. You take a video that was by a creator that happened to mention some products, but didn't tag those products and didn't have any metadata to say what the video was about, and you turn it into this real structured video with clickable links and shoppable capabilities. So suddenly unlocking a ton of video content for retailers, Of course, we're all spending our entire lives on social media, and 56% of that time we spend on social media, we spend watching videos. So, being efficient at creating shoppable videos is a huge thing, and getting all that structured product data out of all those videos is a huge thing. So that was super interesting to me. Another really interesting one was a vendor called Syngretics, which I have a screenshot for, but they had some cool videos in their booth. And essentially what they are is generative AI for the security cameras in your store. So they essentially plug into the cameras. They showed a typical apparel store with 25 security cameras in it. And they have computer vision watching all 25 of those cameras. And then they're able to query the generative AI. You can say, hey, how many people are in my store right now? And the AI goes and looks at the cameras and counts how many customers, and it returns an answer. There's 40 customers in the store right now, including a screenshot of all 40 customers shopping. And you can ask things like, how long are the checkout lines? How many checkout lines are open? Are there any out of stocks? Are there any dangerous situations or spills? And then you can go further. You can assign proactive tasks like send a notification to the store manager whenever there's a spill on any aisle or a disruption or anything like that. So again, it's taking the countless hours of unstructured video that every retailer now captures and turning that into valuable, actionable, structured data. So that seemed like a cool use case. On the first night of NRF, there's a show for vendors, an award show for vendors called the VIP Awards, which is vendors in partnership. And they have a bunch of awards. One of the awards is Breakthrough Technology of the Year. This year, the Breakthrough Technology of the Year was a company called Velo, VELOU. And essentially what they are is a AI-generated structured data for product detail pages. And so they talked about the search icon, that magnifying glass that we see all over the web, being a universal symbol for disappointment. That whenever you have to use that symbol, you likely don't get the exact results. You don't get the relevant results that you want. And Velu is culling through lots of unstructured data, creating much better product detail pages with way more structured data. So when Michelle goes searching for a particular product, it recommends products that really meet her specific needs versus sort of generic ones with a lot of content errors in them. And then, of course, the last kind of vendor I'm going to point out in the kind of efficiencies area is hitting on that search box again. That for years e-commerce engines had built-in search. There were third-party search engines that maybe took things a little further. What we have now is a big battle of at least 3 AI search engines that use much more power of unstructured data and AI to give way more relevant search results than we've ever seen before. So that's Algolia, HawkSearch, and Bloomreach have all built dedicated e-commerce search engines that are based on generative AI. Maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's things in the public consciousness like Perplexity that now has native commerce in it and can do some super powerful search that takes a lot of the traditional burden away from shoppers. And so that brings us to agentic AI, and it sounds like a buzzword. Whenever I say it, people tend to look at me and go, what the heck is agentic AI? And so the way I always like to describe agentic AI is I remind us all of that pitcher that we probably have in our refrigerator at home that filters the water and makes it extra safe and healthy to drink, right? So that Brita water pitcher. And as you may know, you're supposed to change the filter in that Brita water pitcher periodically. And the primary way that consumers remember to change that filter is they walk by a giant stack of those filters at Costco and go, oh crap, I've never changed the filter in my pitcher, right? And they buy a stack of filters from Costco. And a number of years ago, Michelle was a very young woman, but she'll remember that Amazon invented this new thing called subscribe and save. And at the time, we're like, oh no, this is totally going to win for Amazon. No one's ever going to buy a filter from a store anymore because they're just going to subscribe to get a filter sent to them every month. And it solves the auto replenishment problem for filters. And they're going to totally win all of this lucrative commerce business. And And it did work for a little while, but after about a year, it stopped working. And the reason it stopped working is because we all ended up with a closet full of filters that Amazon sent us that we never put in our pitcher. And so we all got subscription fatigue, felt guilty, and canceled our subscription. And in response to that, Amazon had a pretty clever idea. They invented a button called the dash button. And they said, just glue this button onto your refrigerator, and whenever you push it, we'll send you a filter, right? And so now you don't have to worry about getting more filters than you need, but if you're thinking about changing it, you push the button and magic happens. Somewhat predictably, people did not love gluing buttons onto the refrigerator. Today, the dash buttons is a historical remnant. I still have a closet full of them if anyone wants one, but you can't get them from Amazon anymore. And the primary reason you can't is because the darn water pitcher now has Wi-Fi and it orders its own filters, right? And so this is the evolution of what I like to call auto replenishment, right? And so, you know, for most of our careers in shopper marketing, we've all targeted personas like the busy mom, right? And you know, what experience can we create that will be efficient and enticing for that busy mom to help her make better and more frequent purchase decisions of our product? But increasingly in this world of auto replenishment and pitchers that order their own filters, the persona is that NVIDIA chip that's built into the device that's ordering the products. And think about how different its criteria are. It's likely to run a reverse auction for the provider that can best meet its specs with the cheapest price and doesn't care about fast shipping because it can anticipate its need way in advance. And so this has the potential to disrupt a lot of commerce. If you think about the center aisles in a grocery store, there's about half the SKUs in that grocery store that no one has ever got to enjoy shopping for, right? Like, who's ever said, hey, I'm super excited, I get to go shopping for paper towels today, right? If the paper towels could magically just show up in our pantries, nobody would ever go to a store to buy paper towels. But secretly, those paper towels have historically been a great traffic driver to get people into grocery stores where they then discover delicious treats that they want to buy and they take home. Earlier in my career, I used to work for a retailer called Best Buy. And most folks on this call won't remember this era, but you used to be able to buy Spotify playlists on plastic circles called CDs. The way you would get CDs is you'd go to a store like a Tower Records or later Best Buy, and you'd buy music, and music fans bought music every week. So 10,000 square feet of a 40,000 square foot Best Buy store was dedicated to music. You don't go shopping for a TV every week, but you do go shopping for music every week. So that 10,000 square feet was the traffic driver for that 40,000 square foot store. But then the bastards at Spotify figured out how to beam the music right to your home. No one bought plastic circles anymore. And there was an existential crisis at Best Buy. What do we do with this 10,000 square feet in the middle of the store? Well, I'm happy to say Herbert Gillet and his team figured that out. They rented all that space to Amazon and to Apple and to Samsung, and they turned a bunch of that space into professional services like Geek Squad, and they engineered a remarkable recovery for Best Buy. But now, if you're a grocer or a general merchant, you're likely to have the same problem. When the paper towels magically show up at home, what are we going to do with all that space in the center aisle of grocery stores and mass merchants, right? And so last year at CES, you saw, retailers working on the answers. Walmart debuted a generative AI auto replenishment feature. So if you're a Walmart Plus member, not only can you have products automatically come to your home, but they'll suggest products that they think you're going to be in need of and put those into your cart proactively. And so we're starting to see a lot more of this sort of generative AI, not do a specific task like reorder peanut butter, but do a much broader thing like don't ever let me run out of my paper products for my bathroom and my kitchen. And this idea of AI going beyond tasks to big, broad jobs is what we generically call agent-based AI or agentic AI. And the dude that invented that term, his name is Andrew Ng. He's a super credible AI scientist. He ran AI at Google for many years. He's a Stanford professor. In 2013, he was named People Magazine 100 Most Interesting People in the World for his AI research in 2013. So the guy's legit in AI. And if you're wondering what he's doing today, he's Amazon's latest board member. So if you're curious about what Amazon sees as the future of commerce, you have a pretty good guess in Dr. Ng's presence in the Amazon boardroom. And so kind of summarizing all this up, in the old world, I would say something like, hey, Siri, reorder peanut butter. But in the agentic AI world, I'm saying, hey, Siri, never let me run out of ingredients for my kid's lunch. And think about what she's going to do. She's going to see that my kid goes to Chicago public schools and this is their schedule. And that we order food from Walmart and this is how quickly we consume peanut butter. And that Jason flies on United Airlines and he's visiting his in-laws for Thanksgiving and won't need lunch that week. But what it's really going to notice is that his kid doesn't eat peanut butter at all. His kid just eats pirate booty for lunch. And so it's going to make sure I never run out of pirate booty, even though I would have ordered peanut butter if I was ordering it myself, right? And so this is the idea of these agents taking over big jobs. This is potentially hugely disruptive to commerce. And so if you walked around the trade show floor at NRF, you saw all the big booths from the biggest vendors, Salesforce, Amazon, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, and every one of them, the largest font in the whole booth was dedicated to their new AI agents. And they're all in a knife fight to win the future of compute, which they all see as agent-based AI. And so, you know, Doug Harrington, the newest NRF board member who runs commerce at Amazon, he talked about the fact that Amazon Rufus has already responded to 100 million customer inquiries, and Amazon has now productized Rufus and is selling it to other retailers. So if you're a specialty retailer, you can buy that Rufus technology to be your own agent-based AI for that. Microsoft has Copilot for commerce. Google has Gemini for commerce. NVIDIA has a whole set of AI blueprints specifically for retail shopping assistance. So all of the vendors are leaning way into these AI-based technologies. And then there were a bunch of startups as well. So one I noticed was a company called Nibble, which is essentially an agent for negotiating prices. And so this is an agent you can put on product detail pages, and when it notices that a customer is not converting because they don't accept the stock price that's one size fits all, a agent can come on and negotiate a price specifically for Michelle and maybe save a conversion at a little lower margin, but be really intelligent about when it offers discounts and when it doesn't for particular customers. And they talk about the potential like fun engagement in the brand voice of these agents kind of negotiating with consumers to save more sales. So that was super interesting. And then the last big trend of NRF was kind of a broad trend. So we've lumped it all together. I'll call it the state of the industry. So the NRF does a lot of great things for the retail industry. One thing they did last year is they launched a new data set called the NRF Retail Monitor in conjunction with a company called Affinity and with CNBC. And during NRF Big Show, they released their data on December sales. So they were now able to see the whole year's data. The day after the show, the US Department of Commerce releases its sales data. And so we now know what total sales were for 2024. And congratulations to everyone on this call. In 2024, we sold $7.4 trillion worth of stuff. So that's crazy. That's about a quarter of the US GDP, by the way. It's a little less than 3% growth from the previous year. It's pretty big growth from before the pandemic. But at the National Retail Federation, they don't talk about this number very much. They don't like this number. The number they like to focus on is a little bit more narrow number. It's what they call core retail. So that's retail sales minus restaurants, gas stations, and car dealerships, right? And there's a lot of historic reasons that those categories are really volatile and don't necessarily follow the same trends as the rest of retail. Personally, I might argue that that's less true than it used to be, but regardless, the NRF has really consistently used this core retail data. So in 2024, core retail sales were $5.3 trillion, which is up 3.6% from the previous year. So to kind of put 3.6% growth in context, NRF forecasted this year that we'd have between 2.5% and 3.5% growth. So 3.6 beats their forecast, which we always like to beat the forecast. It is a little lower growth than we had last year. Last year we grew at 3.9%, so 3.6 is lower than 3.9, and it is lower than the historical average. Historically, over the last 10 years, we tend to grow at 4.1% a year. So 3.6% growth, I'll call it the low side of average. But the bad news in this number is that 5 retailers way outperform this number. And 2 of them are the two largest retailers in the industry. So Amazon and Walmart both grew way faster than 3.9%. And then we have 3 Chinese direct-to-consumer companies, Shein, Temu, and TikTok Shops, that together sold $50 billion worth of stuff that they didn't sell in 2023. So you add those 5 retailers together, and more than half of all growth in the retail industry is those 5 retailers. And what that means is the rest of retail did not have a great year. Like, while the average was pretty average, most retailers that aren't in those 5 perform below that average. And because we're living through this vibe session and consumers were trading down and discounting was particularly high, the profitability numbers are even worse than the sales numbers. And so a lot of the discussion at NRF Big Show was retailers talking about how they didn't have a great financial outcome in 2024, and what kind of measures they were putting in place to address that in 2025. And in most cases, it's a laser focus on profitability. It's about cost controls. It's not about investing in the biggest shiny new bauble. It's not about opening a bunch of fancy new flagship stores. It's about right-sizing their fleets, which in many cases means closing stores, and doing the things that customers care the most about more efficiently than ever before. And so a lot of the hallway conversations was these kind of retailers talking about how, hey, it wasn't a great year. We're really focused on cost cutting and efficiencies. And they said in hushed tones because they've read these averages that are more favorable, and it never feels good to be kind of below the industry average. So the last point on the state of the industry is that e-commerce continues to be the bright spot in commerce. So we still only have about 3/4 of data for e-commerce. It comes out a month later, so we'll get the year-end data next month. But through 3/4, e-commerce is growing about 7.5% from last year, which is still twice as fast as retail. You'll remember, like retail grew at 3.6, e-commerce is growing at 7.5. That is huge growth from the pandemic. It's over 114% growth from the pandemic. It's 15% of all retail sales, but it's 20% of that core retail number. So part of the reason we think e-commerce is slowing down is what we call the law of large numbers. That as you know, e-commerce is now 1 out of every $5 spent in the United States. It's hard to grow as fast. So again, historically, e-commerce grew at 4%, e-commerce grew at 15%, but now what we're seeing is retail growing at 3.5% and e-commerce growing at 7.5%. So they're starting to get closer. The distinction between e-commerce and retail is getting less and less important. This brings up a side note. There's always buzzwords in our retail industry, and there was one that really elevated on all the signage on the booth this year, and it's called unified commerce. So for those of you that are super ancient like me, you'll remember there was this new invention in retail called multi-channel. And then, the new kids came in and said, oh, multi-channel is not cool, it's cross-channel. And then the new kids came in and said, Grandpa, cross-channel is not cool, it's omni-channel. And now we have a new crop of young kids coming in building trade show booths, and they're calling it unified commerce. It's all the same thing. It's all talking about reducing these silos between digital and physical, much like Michele was talking about reducing those silos in the retail media space in the beginning of this session. And I would argue that all these terms are silly. What we really need to do is get rid of the first word. It's all just commerce, right? So that's the word I really like to focus on. And The last keynote session that we're going to talk about is David Solomon. He did an interview with Matt Shea. Matt Shea is the president of the National Retail Federation. David Solomon's the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And this keynote was surprisingly well attended because retailers are laser focused on the economy and what's going to happen with the new presidential administration. And David's sort of advice to the audience was that there's an unprecedentedly wide range of retail outcomes from this new administration. So he talked a lot about tariffs. And that the administration has proposed a very muscular use of tariffs. That tariffs aren't inherently bad; they can be helpful to an economy, but muscular use historically has not worked well. And that tariffs could be a drag on the U.S. economy, and that the sort of aggressive trade practices that the Trump administration has proposed could potentially be a real negative to the retail economy. But then he pointed out, that historically the Trump administration has also been very pro income tax reductions, and that when those income tax reductions reach consumers, they have more money in their pocket and traditionally spend that money at retail. So the administration's tax policy could be favorable to retail, and deregulation could potentially be favorable. And at the time, we were talking about how much shopping had moved from the store to social media, and how important TikTok had become in the lives of consumers, and how we were days away from TikTok being blocked in the U.S. And now, consumers lost TikTok for about 2 hours and then got it back, which is kind of like when your girlfriend breaks up with you for a minute and you realize how stupid you've been. There's a lot of interesting outcomes that we're likely going to have over the next year. And David's point was you really need contingency planning, because the next 4 years could be a really friendly economy for U.S. retailers, but it could also be a really challenging economy for U.S. retailers. And you just have to be ready for that whole wide range of outcomes, which certainly made sense to me. So that, in a nutshell, are the three big trends that we saw at NRF Big Show this year. Michele, if you're interested in some of these trends, and particularly if retail media networks are something that you're interested in, what should you do?
Well, use this QR code and it'll take you to us. And as you guys might know, we are the creators of the Retail Media Scorecard or Report Card globally. And so with that view, sometimes you can't see what's right in front of you. So we can take a look and help you identify some gaps maybe in your plan and how you might be able to optimize your network. So please do.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm scanning that QR code right now. And in fact, I'll leave it on the screen for another minute for folks that need a second to get out your phone. I'll remind all of you with new iPhones that you now have a dedicated button that you can hold down to open the camera and scan a QR code. I forget to use that button every single time. So I don't know how long it takes me to build a new habit, but I think it's way more than the average human. With that, I really want to thank everyone for joining us today. I have great news. If you registered for this webinar and you gave us your email address, we're going to email you a complete copy of this presentation and some additional bonus materials, deeper dive on some of these topics. So look for that. And if this kind of content's useful to you, if you don't want to miss these recaps in the future, if you want to stay up on all the latest trends, what I highly encourage you to do is jump on LinkedIn and search for the Publicis Commerce account on LinkedIn. Follow us on Publicis Commerce. Michele, myself, Andy Murray, lots of really smart practitioners in the Publicis Commerce team are constantly sharing really valuable insights and trends there. So that's a great way to stay caught up. And that is essentially the recap that we planned for you. And we brought it in 45 minutes exactly as promised. So I certainly want to wish everyone a happy commercing. And I hope everyone stays warm and safe and really thrives as we move into the new year.